Accidental death. This is an experience which I would like to share with all my friends here. This happened last year when I was associated with YPro BPO. I was doing an evening shift. My shift timing was 5:30 p.m. to 3 a.m. I took the drop at 3:15 a.m. While we were passing by a place called Boulder's Den, a strange thing happened. All of us in the cab suddenly started feeling extremely warm and suffocating. It was unbearable. It felt as if we were about to die because of the suffocation. Strangely, as soon as we went ahead for just 1 minute from that place, everything became normal once again. The temperature was normal, that suffocation feeling was gone, and we were able to breathe in normally. We came back the next day and got in touch with some of the local people of that area. Then we came to know that a couple of years back, an extremely sad incident had taken place. A lady who worked in a BPO was returning from her workplace, as she resided nearby, so she did not use to take the office drop. She used to commute by herself. On that tragic night, she was on her way home when a cab came and hit her and killed her. After that, these kinds of strange and horrible incidents have been happening, and many people have faced strange and weird incidences. I still don't know what that was, but those 2 to 3 minutes were perhaps the most horrible moments in my life. Hong Kong taxi ghost story. A while ago, I was listening to the radio late at night when a caller called in. She was female, sounded fairly young, and had a terrifying experience. I don't exactly recall the full details of the story, but it was late at night, and this young girl was taking a taxi home alone by herself. She had just come from some sort of a party or a dinner, and although that was the case, she was not drunk in any way. She got into a normal-looking taxi when she started to realize something. In Hong Kong, taxi drivers have their ID with their name, license plates, etc., all displayed in the front of their vehicle. When she almost got home, she happened to catch a glimpse of the driver's ID card. He had a normal name, normal license plate, but there was one thing off. In the photo, he had no face. The girl was terrified and confused. Was this just an old photo that had been smudged? Yet she realized that she had never looked the driver in the face. I mean, he was in the front and she was behind. She really had no reason to look how he looked like. And he sounded normal enough. After she arrived at her destination, she paid fast and got out of the car. She decided to take one final glance behind her to satisfy her curiosity. She looked at the driver. He was as in his photo, faceless. She was shocked, but she didn't say anything. She didn't scream or anything like that. She just acted normal, and like normal, the taxi drove off. It was later said that around that general area, the faceless taxi driver had been seen by more than just one passenger. Others started to call in about this faceless ghost driver, and even till this day, this remains a creepy urban legend around those parts. I'm not sure how accurate this is. This was a very long time ago, but there seemed to be no definite conclusion about this faceless driver, and the story seemed to have been forgotten. But is he still around? Who knows? Thanks for reading. A visit from Arnie. As I left the office, The only thing I could think about was getting out of my suit and heels and into some sweats and tennis shoes. I was looking forward to relaxing, as it had been a very long day and the end of the week was near. The weekend, holding a promise of maybe some relaxation and rest. I turned on the radio in my truck to relax on my way home. As I merged into the traffic on I-480 southbound, I found that the traffic had soon come to a crawl. I turned stations on my radio to see if there may be a traffic report to explain the congestion. A news report came on shortly, explaining a horrific accident that had occurred on the I-40 northbound side that was causing many problems for traffic proceeding in both directions. I decided that I really did not want to deal with the traffic mess and would exit at the first chance and take the side streets home. I tuned back onto my music. As I approached the next exit near the Creighton Medical College, I could see the wreckage on the off-ramp. It was horrible. The red car had folded like an accordion upon hitting a tree. There, of course, were medical crews on the scene, and they appeared to be doing CPR on the poor individual extracted from the car. I said a silent prayer to God's will and proceeded off the exit ramp. I decided to stop at a convenience-type food mart to grab milk and bread, hopefully keeping me from having to go out later in the evening. I made my way through the store looking for the items. As I rounded the corner, my cousin, Arnie, approached from the other side. I was so excited to see him. It had been months since we had seen each other. I knew he had recently taken on a second job to make ends meet. As a taxi driver, times are tough all over, and $1 doesn't seem to stretch as it used to. But he looked terribly exhausted. "Arnie!" I exclaimed. I'm so glad to see you." He stared blankly at me for a few moments, then greeted me with a hug and a "how are you?" I told him I was well and asked him how he was doing. "I am okay. I'm so tired. So tired. I want to go home." I asked him if he needed my help. He said no. He had a fare he was picking up at Creighton. He was driving a taxi as a second job, right? It was important to finish the job and pick up the fare. He looked so tired and had such a blank expression that I had become concerned. I told him I would call his dispatch and tell him he was ill. I could drive him home to rest, and they could send someone after the taxi. He said no. He had to pick up his fare. He then kept repeating at least 3 or 4 times that he just wanted to go home, do his job, and go home. Arnie had 3 wonderful children that he loved more than life itself, and I was assuming that he was missing his children, but he just looked ill. I told him that we needed to keep in touch, and that I missed seeing him. He turned and walked away towards the checkout stand, and looked back over his shoulder. As he walked away, over his shoulder he said, "Love ya." His words were slow and halting, and he was walking very slowly. My concern maintained. I felt like he was ill and needed to rest. I grabbed a couple of items I needed from the store and proceeded to the checkout. I figured I could catch up to Arnie and maybe persuade him to take me on my offer to take him home. He should not be driving, let alone picking up taxi fares. Feeling that poorly, as I approached the check stand, Arnie was nowhere in sight. I checked the clerk if she saw which direction Arnie had gone. She asked what he looked like. I described him, and Arnie was hard to miss. He was 6'3", 250 pounds, with shoulder-length blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. The clerk said she had not seen anyone fitting that description. There was only one checkout register, so I chalked it up to her having seen so many people all day that she had forgotten. I looked into the parking area quickly to see if I could pick him out in the lot anywhere. He was nowhere to be seen. I made my purchases and continued home. I figured I would call Arnie later and see how he was feeling. As I continue my drive home, the radio mentioned the accident again and stated the interstate was still backed up due to the accident. I got home, changed clothes, and sat down to relax. My husband asked if I would like to go out to dinner at one of those family-style restaurants. Neither of us wanting to cook, we got back into the truck. The radio announced the accident was still being cleaned up. We took the side streets. As we ordered our dinner, I began to get a terrible headache. A few minutes later, I became very nauseated. I thought perhaps I was suddenly coming down with something. Our dinner was served and I asked for a box. With the way I had started to feel, I would not be able to eat a thing. A few minutes later, my cell phone rang. It was my aunt, Arnie's mother. She informed me that Arnie had just passed on. He was in a horrible car accident driving his taxi. She wanted to explain that it was the very accident that had been on the radio and had blocked the traffic earlier in the evening. I was stunned. The accident occurred at around 4:15 p.m. They had a terrible time extricating him from the wreckage. He passed at Creighton Medical Center at 6:30 p.m. I was absolutely numb. I had just seen and visited with Arnie at the food mart at 5:30. How? Why? I am still numb and confused. This incident occurred 2 days ago, and as I grieve for Arnie and for my family's loss, I also continue to wonder and feel confused, and actually a bit frightened. Why do these things keep happening to me? What shall I do about this?